always have enough faith to call out to the Master. Where I'm trying to go, Jesus is already there. He gives me an invitation to come. There's no one or nobody that is stronger than the God we serve.
Good evening and welcome back to another broadcast from Mount Bethel Missionary Baptist Church. Our address is 1620 Helena Street, Jacksonville, Florida. And you can give us a call here if you want to at area code 904-764-8032. Let me start off this broadcast by giving you a friendly reminder that if you have not subscribed to our YouTube page, subscribe to the YouTube. You can hit us on the comments, like our page, and share with us information that you have. Call to the church. We can always correspond with you, have any questions, anything if it's dealing with Bible study, maybe just have questions in general. If you don't get an answer here from our secretary, just leave us a message and we will get back with you as soon as possible. But we're so glad that you could join us here for our broadcast, here for our Bible study this Tuesday evening. We're so glad to have you with us as we continue our series. We're looking at the 37 miracles that Jesus performed during his lifetime here on earth. Now, we're not covering all 37 of them, but we are going to look at some significant ones. And last week we dealt with number 8 and number 9, and this week we're going to look at number 10, because number 10 is something significant to the growth of the church financially, and it's the growth of a church not just with money but with duties, because until people lend a helping hand, nothing's going to get done. Churches have to pay their bills, and they have upkeep, changing of doorknobs, doors, windows, whatever it takes to keep the physical building intact. And then there's some things we have to keep the spiritual building. That's the members that it takes to do that. So we're looking at this week, number 10, how Jesus heals a man with a withered hand on the Sabbath day. A lot of people talk about keeping the Sabbath day holy. Yes, that is the original commandment that Moses was given. But you have to look at how Jesus simplified our commandments. And he basically said it's better for you to do good on the Sabbath than to worry about Sabbath controlling what you do. Okay. Our scripture comes from Luke chapter 6, verses 6 through 11, and it reads, "And it came to pass also another Sabbath, that he entered into the synagogue and taught. And there was a man whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and the Pharisees watched him, whether he would heal on the Sabbath day, that they might find an accusation against him. But he knew their thoughts, and said to the man which had the withered hand, Rise up, and stand forth in the midst. And he arose and stood forth. Then said Jesus unto them, I will ask you one thing. Is it lawful on the Sabbath days to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it? And looking round about upon them all, he said unto the man, Stretch forth thy hand. And he did so, and his hand was restored whole as the other. And they were filled with madness, and communed one with another what they might do to Jesus." What kind of men are we dealing with? One man being holy and the others being unruly. Jesus has changed a man's entire life. A man that wasn't able to stretch forth his hand was healed. The funny thing about this is some say that this was a setup, that they purposely put a man in this synagogue so they could accuse Jesus of not keeping the Sabbath day holy. But just like we do in our times now, if you think about it, there's God in the midst of their evil thinking. Because why would you place a man with a withered hand who they knew of no doctors or anybody that could heal him, but you placed him in front of the ultimate healer, God himself, in the incarnation of Jesus, knowing that if you placed him there, he was going to heal him? You couldn't take him to the emergency room. You couldn't take him to a therapist or a doctor for the healing that he needed. But see, God works mysteriously. Even in a plot that was based upon evil, God was able to work a miracle. Jesus worked this miracle in the midst of a whole bunch of mess, because them not knowing that there was a master plan that outweighed their plan, they brought a man that needed to be healed to the right person to heal him. Even if it was on the Sabbath day, Jesus provided the healing that he needed. What we find here in the midst of all this was an opportunity to see who Jesus really was. I remember when Moses stood at the Red Sea, and even before he got there, when he was in the midst of other so-called leaders and he didn't know how to make it through, God simply asked him one question, and you find that in Exodus chapter 4, verse 2. It says, "And the Lord said unto him, What is that in thine hand?" And Moses replied, "A rod." Everything you need to accomplish what you have, God has already placed in your presence. What you need to get through the day is already with you. And any additional things that you need, God will provide them for you. Some people are on their way to an accident that will never happen because God has placed some things, a plan in front of you. You're stopping at a place that you didn't know you need to stop, but it just takes a matter of seconds or minutes to get you to stop from speeding into an accident. And instead of being in the accident, you may even pass right by the accident that was set as a trap for you, that God brought you through and around it. So what is in your hands? Maybe you're talking about expanding your business. Maybe you're talking about expanding your church. You're growing now, even before the pandemic, because most churches are not doing a whole lot of growth. Right now, we're trying to bring members back in. But you had a plan that was facing you, that you were trying to expand and build new buildings for your congregation. The resources that you needed are still there. The people that you need are your best resources, those members that you already have. God is going to provide the sources through your resources, but you've got to be willing to let them in on it. Some people are out here trying to talk about what they built. No, if the building's for God, then let God get the glory of what you're building. Maybe you're looking for a new home. Maybe you're looking at your credit scores, and according to what you see, it's not the score that you would like to have as you go to try to get that new vehicle or that new home. But what God is saying is, you've got to trust him. What's in your hands? It's already right there. You just got to rely on what he's given you to work some things out for you. God is a friend like that. He makes miracles even in our modern day times. When it even coming to healing, right now, our pastor just recently had back surgery. And the surgery was on a few hours, but the rehab can take months. And it's a process. He didn't get these problems overnight. And our healing, even though God could if he wanted to, God can just speak a word and we could be healed. But sometimes it's a process. And we learn things throughout the process. I love the scripture in the 23rd Psalm where it says, "He maketh me lie down in green pastures." I don't hear people preach on that part of that Bible scripture very often, but it's very significant that you look into that. He maketh me to lie down. Look, sometimes we get too busy for our bodies. That's why we call them that. You're a busybody. You get too busy. You're trying to do way more than your body can physically handle. I don't know if anybody that prays for gray hairs, but sometimes we just wake up and, hey, look, they're right there. And they didn't come to visit. They came to stay. Oh, you can dye them and color them all you want to, but you don't get to the root of it. You cut it off, that root is still growing gray and it grows right back up. But the Bible tells us that those oar hairs are what they call it. Those gray hairs are a sign of wisdom. God has allowed some of us to get a little bit older. Hey, just a few more months, I'll be 53 years old. And a lot of people don't live to be that age. I've had classmates and friends within these last few years did not make it this far along in the journey. They've gone on, and hopefully they've gone on to glory to be with the God that I'm talking about today. But what he's basically doing, he lays us down. But the place that he lays us is fertile. It's a nutritious place. He lays us down not in the desert place, but in green pastures. Where he places you is where he's going to provide for you. He lays us down because we will not lay down. He lays us down in green pastures. So he takes the laying of his hands, even if it has to be spiritually. He has to slow us down. He provides for us in the place where he places us so that we can be restored, we can be renewed, and we can continue on in our journey. So let's stop and let's thank God for his laying on of hands. And even when he allows us to go and lay our hands as intercessors for others, because it is necessary. Then he asks us a third thing. He's asked us, what's in your hands? He's taught us about the laying on of hands. And then the next thing he talks about is lending a hand. I got a couple of scriptures that I want to share with you when we want to talk about the lending of a hand. Mark chapter 27, verse 32 says, as they went out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. They compelled this man to carry his cross. If we go and we look at Mark chapter 15, verse 21, they said they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the follower of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross. Then in Luke chapter 23, verse 26, it talks about the same man. And as they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry it behind Jesus. I like the way that Luke makes sure at the end of this verse, he said that he laid the cross on him and he carried it behind Jesus. You have to know where your place is. You must be led by the cross. That cross represents Jesus, which that cross is a very, very funny thing, because we don't often use a method of execution as our representation of our faith. You don't see anybody walking around with a necklace with a needle that represents a lethal injection, or a noose that represents a hanging, or with an electric chair that represents someone being electrocuted as a punishment for their crimes. But yet and still, that thing that Jesus connected to, the cross, the same one he bare, that we found a man named Simon that took the place of another Simon. What do you mean? Think about it. Before Jesus went to the cross, he told Simon Peter that the devil desired to have you, to sift you as wheat. But I prayed for you. And we said, I prayed for you. He was talking to all the disciples and even to us, that Jesus prayed that we'd have strength. And Simon Peter told Jesus that, hey, I was going to be with you even until the death, be to you to the end of time. And he bragged about this stuff, but we know what happened. Sure enough, before the cock crowed 3 times, Simon Peter denied that he knew Jesus the Christ. But now that was heading one place, and now as Jesus headed to the cross, he finds another Simon. Simon of Cyrene, the man of color. Let me first of all mention that. That's right. Don't let nobody tell you that you're limited because of color of your skin. This man, Simon, was from an area of people with dark pigment in their skin. That's right. He was a brother. And even the area Jesus grew up in, this is Middle East. And I'm not trying to throw anybody off because I don't want color to keep separating us. I don't care if Jesus was purple and green. He died for you, regardless of your race, your creed, or your color, your size, your nationality, your gender, male or female, or not sure. He died for you. That's how much he loved us. But he found a man that was willing to lend a helping hand, and this man named Simon from an area called Cyrene. And they placed this cross on him. Must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free? Well, the answer to that question is no. There is a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for you, and there's a cross for me. But this man here was willing, even if he was forced to, because what happened is he was the first cross bearer. Many say that Simon of Cyrene became the first Christian because he literally carried the first cross. And he carried this cross behind Jesus. Jesus continued to walk to a hill called Calvary and a place called Golgotha, where he would lay his life down for you and me. Simon of Cyrene helped him to get the cross there. First, it's not to be overlooked that Simon carried Jesus' cross. Matthew, Mark clearly state that he carried that cross. And Luke told you the position that he carried it in. But it's so profound that this man Jesus, who all the gospel writers clearly understand to be God in the flesh or God incarnate, needs assistance at this moment of his suffering. Is God not the one who bears the suffering for us? Then why then does he need assistance of what seems to be a random man? Simon carried Jesus' cross is our reminder of Jesus' humility. Before his arrest and betrayal, Jesus said that Jesus said to his would-be followers, if anyone will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. That's in Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Like I said before, Simon literally does exactly this. Simon of Cyrene, following behind Jesus with the cross, is the picture of perfect discipleship. A lot of people like to ask the question of, are you a Christian? Well, I heard something recently that changed my opinion of you have to be more than just a Christian. Anybody can be a Christian, but are you a disciple? Are you a follower of Christ? Do you call yourself a Christian and then you do whatever you want to do? That's not being a good disciple. A disciple is a faithful follower who trusts in the leadership of what God tells us to do. You're not in this thing by yourself. You must put yourself at a point of accountability. I said this past Sunday, that how are you to come through the servant's entrance if you've never served? Jesus wants to be able to say to us, well done, my good and faithful servant. But if you've never served, you can't be a servant. You can't always demand that people serve you because you're not God. You can't even control yourself. Your body is doing things or is about to do things that you never thought about. And all the doctors in the world won't be able to control those things the way God can control those things. He loves you. He desires that your life be better and that you not be bitter. So what's in your hands? What are the resources that you can lend to mankind? Not just to your church, but to mankind. You are an instrumental part of your own community. You know who's doing what in your community, and you know who's not doing what in your community. It's up to us to hold some people to the fire and hold them accountable for things, the things they're doing and the things that they're not doing. It's time for us to stand up to our government officials and make sure that they're doing what we've paid them to do and not taking advantage of the payments that we're making to them. It's time for us to stand up in our schools. Time for you to stand up for those that are being bullied, those that are being wrongfully treated. And it's time for you to stand up and pay attention to those things that your teachers are trying to teach to you. You can't be the class know-it-all and the class clown. It's hard for a teacher to teach when the students can't hear the teacher over you talking or you playing. It's time for you to stand up and be accountable as mothers, as fathers, as children, as grandparents. Your community and your family are counting on you to do these things. And you have to be humble unto the Lord. You can't serve your community until you serve God first. These are the things that are necessary for us to grow spiritually, for us to understand the roles that we play in our society, in our homes, and in our churches. What's in your hands? Those are the resources. The laying on of hands, that's being a good intercessor, being able to pray for other people other than just yourself. And then you've got to get out and you've got to lend a hand. The only time you should look down on anybody is when you're looking for a way to bring them up. And that's what God is counting on us to do for one another. I love the song that says, lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. That's what we need to be. We don't need to lean on people to the point that we bring them down, but lean on them just enough to give some stability to ourselves and to give them a good shoulder, even if they need it just to cry on. We have got to be intercessors. We are working modern day miracles and we don't even know it. You just have to make yourself available and make yourself presentable. You're representing God. You're representing also your family. I oftentimes think about how my grandmother or my grandfathers would feel about me if I carried myself in a way in which I'm not representing the family name right. But even more than that, if you call yourself a Christian and you eventually want to call yourself a disciple of Christ, then look at how you carry yourself amongst the public. When you're out and people should see you and know that you are a follower of Christ and not a follower of man. We can't be sagging men. That's not a good look on you. And it's sad to say that even when people find out where that originated in prisons, some of us are too old to sag. And some of us are so old that our body's already sagging. We don't need our clothes to sag. But God is looking for you to be a representation of modern day miracles. We are the hands that are needed. Jesus had a man, that hand was withered, that he stretched forth his hand. When you stretch forth your hand, you begin to change things because now you're not holding on so tight to that you have in your hand. Look at that fist I showed. That fist is a representation of somebody holding on to something. And it's causing their hand to be withered because what's in their hand needs to be spread amongst men. But we want to hold on to it so tight. I worked for a funeral home since 2004, and I've seen the hearse behind us as we drove, and sometimes I've even driven the hearse. Sometimes I've driven the family cars that are behind the hearse. And then the rest of the family follows behind the hearse. But I've yet to see an armored car follow behind the hearse, the lead car, or the family, and follow us with the money to the cemetery. But what happens is that person that's dead Their bank account is yet still alive. And families will fight in order to gain access to those things that they possessed. So while your hand is withered, do as Jesus instructed this man. Stretch forth your hand and provide resources. Your resource can be the way you think. It can be you sharing experiences with young people, because trust me, they don't think we've been through anything. Just like we did when we were young, we thought our parents didn't know what they were talking about. But the older we get, the more in contact we get with the same things. And a lot of times we say it the same way they did. They get us in touch with that same information they tried to provide to us when we were growing. Now it's our turn. We are the influence of our community. We're getting a little bit older. Hopefully we're getting a little bit wiser. So we're able to present back to our communities, to our churches, to our cities, states, and nations, and even to this world, the information that God has invested in us. It's time for us to deposit that information and that knowledge to others. I hope you enjoyed our Bible study this evening, and I hope it's beneficial to you. And I hope you, sir, and I hope you, ma'am, can gain the attitude to not have a withered hand, but to stretch that hand forth. May God bless you, and may God keep you is our prayer.